Welcome to the 5th episode of This Week in Mappercraft. This past week was January 25th to January 31st, and we'll be covering the years of 2016, 2020, 2022, and 2025. As always, all information here can be found on the Mappercraft wiki, which is linked in the description along with the server itself. Let's go over the years. In 2016, the server was running Earthworld Revived under Monsoon Jr. In 2020, the server was running Solus World 2 under Solus. In 2022, the server was running Brave New World under me, MintyMichael. And last year, 2025, the server was running Ramayana World, also under me, MintyMichael. 2016 is pretty in-depth, but the other years are a little light on events. First off, we have 4 events from January 25th to the 29th, 2016. There are a bunch of events here for Earthworld Revived, but I've chosen 8 here out of the 7 days of the week. First one we have on the 25th is the Byzantine Reconquest of Trebizond, where True Swordsman, the leader of Byzantium and a member of the Gerahensi Caliphate, attacks and takes over the city of Trebizond, owned by someone named Newman. Apparently this was a relatively one-sided war, as seen by this quote here. Next up, on the 26th, we have the first successful Lapanian nuclear test, where the nation of Lapania tested their quote-unquote nuclear weapons by blowing up 11 pieces of TNT in Colombia. Technically, the Halivians had already used quote-unquote nuclear weapons in the American War in using 15 pieces of TNT. This marked an increase in Lapanian focus on military matters, and it's a fun way to add some lore to your nation to kind of do. Here's the quote. I kind of wish people would bring this back. This was kind of a funny thing that people used to do. Next up, on the 28th, only 3 days after conquering Trebizond, we have the Byzantine War for Independence against Gerahensi. The Byzantine forces hired FedEx out of Halivia and quickly destroyed Algiers, the capital. However, the Creator 901 still held out in a hidden bunker called Vault 901. After failing to find it, the two sides negotiated a treaty. Byzantium successfully gained their independence, but were banned from entering Algiers and also were required to stop searching for the Vault 901. Here's the quote detailing all of that. So it's kind of a successful war for independence for them. Also on the 28th, Lapania replaced Vinland in the Grand Alliance with the Tamil Empire. After their successful nuclear test and Vinland's main players going inactive, Tamil and Lapania agreed to an alliance to try and basically rule the world. This didn't really go that well, as we'll see later on. But, for now we have the quote there. Next up, still in 2016, we have 4 events on January 30th and 31st, 2016, a pair of very eventful days. First, on the 30th, the Second Warring Era began, lasting about 2 weeks. It was marked by several different wars, including the Tamil War, the Great War, the Second Great War, and the end of Donatian civilization. The end of the era ushered in a period of dominance for the nations led by Batran and FedEx for the next year or so of the server. In Earthworld, that was mainly Halivia and its successor, Starim. Here's the quote there. And kicking off the new era, we have the Tamil War on the same day, January 30th. This war is rather complicated, but basically, Lapania was still a bit annoyed at the Tamil Empire for invading them during the American War with Vinland, as well as not helping rebuild their capital, Havana, as was stipulated by the treaty at the end of that previous war. The Lapanians hired not only the Halivians, but Javasi from France and Nano from Naibia to help with their attack. After sneaking most of their army into Madras, the capital of Tamil, they declared war. Tamil's 2 acting leaders at the time, Extra and Evergreen, disagreed on what to do. Evergreen wanted to surrender sort of unilaterally, while Extra wanted to sort of open negotiations while still defending their territory in the hopes of a profitable ceasefire. Evergreen eventually made a deal with Lapania and Halivia where Tamil would be partitioned into 4 separate smaller states, which would be under the jurisdiction of Halivia. Extra felt betrayed and swore revenge before sort of retreating into the wilderness. He complained that although Halivia had not technically officially fought in the war, the mercenaries basically represented their involvement and had taken over the peace treaty in order to gain an advantage for themselves. and players wondered which side Emperor TL would take when he returned the next day, but for the most part people were glad that the Tamil Empire and Vinland were gone, and that the Grand Alliance was disbanded as a result. Here's the heavily cropped quote for that. If you really want to know more about this, I highly suggest reading the big paragraph on the wiki in the Earthworld Revived page. On the next day, January 31st, following the war, we have the Ausonian War on Helivia. When Emperor TL of the Tamil Empire got back online and found his empire destroyed, he immediately joined with Extra in the wilderness of northeastern China. There, they founded the Khanate of Osania and declared war on all of the attackers of Tamil, mostly Helivia, who they accused of having a stranglehold on the politics of the world. Additionally, this represented a conflict between the two sort of server cultures of Donutian and Hyranian, which trace their lineages back to the nations on the first world of the server Panagia world. The conflict raged all day, with the Ausonians destroying both Helivia and Lapania in a series of 5 sieges on Livonis and Havana, while the opposing forces attempted in vain to find and destroy the Ausonian capital Karakoram. Only a few small nations like Taiwan were spared from the destruction, leading people to call this the Great War or the First Great War. You can see this detailed in the quote here. Eventually, a peace treaty was signed between Ausonia, Helivia, and the other nations called the Treaty of Syracuse, although this would directly lead to the next event here, the post-war crisis, as nations refused to agree to the treaty after it was written and attempted to ignore the provisions by dissolving their nations and then reforming them elsewhere. Extra threatened destruction on those who ignored the treaty, according to the quote, so it seems like most nations at least pretended to follow it to get the Ausonians to back off. But this marks the end of Earthworld Revived for this week. Make sure to tune in next week to see how it all shakes out in the beginning of February. Next up, we have January 25th to the 31st, 2020, during Solus World 2. First, on the 28th, the Empire of Anglo-Celtia was formed as a merger of 3 different nations based in the British Isles, according to the quote here. This was a minorly impactful nation which disbanded over time, but eventually their remnants joined the European Union later in the world. Next up, we have an alliance that was formed between Zuiderland in Australia and Italy in Europe. Not sure if this alliance had any major effects on foreign politics at the time, but it probably mattered during the Zuider War, which happened a little bit later in the world's history. Here's the quote for that. Next, on the 30th, the server temporarily went down to update to the latest Minecraft version, as you can see here. And then on the 31st, the server reopened after updating, as seen here. Not a super eventful week for Solus World 2. Next up, we have January 25th to the 31st, 2022, during Brave New World. Only 2 small events here. Server wasn't super active at the time. First, we have on the 31st, World Closing being announced. I announced it to happen on February 3rd, as seen in my quote here, as I thought that that was when the billing period was supposed to end for the hosting service, and I wasn't planning on paying for the next month. Additionally, on the same day, I resigned from host, took a break from Mappercraft so I could focus on IRL school stuff. Definitely a needed break here, as at the time, I wasn't really having any fun with the server, so there was no point in staying. I didn't make any statements. It was a little bit of a spur-of-the-moment decision, so no quote there. Finally, for the last world, this week we have January 25th to the 31st, 2025, last year during Ramayana World. First, on the 26th, Emperor Agnias fell ill with the plague, which was a lore way of saying that he just kind of went inactive. This is kind of a cool thing to do, but unfortunately, if the whole world is kind of becoming inactive at the same time, it's a bit depressing to say that everybody is dying of the plague. Carrot Aurelius took over as the Emperor Regent, as seen here. And then later, on the 31st, Emperor Agnias officially, quote-unquote, died in-game, and Carrot took over the nation, reorganizing it into the Ajran Ascendancy, a theocracy led by themselves, as seen by the quote here. Carrot basically just did this to prevent certain builds from being destroyed by random griefing protected. Also on the 31st, Rezdan was formed by Joel in the ruins of former nations that had been ravaged by plague. As you can see the quote from him forming the nation here. Joel would turn out to be a contentious player across worlds, but I'm not sure Rezdan really went anywhere there, unfortunately. Kind of just a random nation. But this marks the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out the server at the link in the description. As always, if you have any additional information about any of these events, leave a comment down below or go ahead and add it to the Mappercraft wiki. See you next week for the first week of February, February 1st through the 7th.